Well, everybody, it is October 16th, 2024. This is episode number 175 of Material Issues. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. I'm over here on the East Coast where fall is in full swing in the early evening, but it's a beautiful time for walks and the leaves color changing, unlike Southern California, which stays the same year round. And that's where David Bash, my co-host and the president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, is. David, how the heck are you tonight?
I'm fine, Mark. How are you?
Good. I'm in one of those crazy moods. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're just enjoying. We're enjoying the day, enjoying everything going on. A lot of great music. I'm getting ready for my visit next week to Orlando with my daughters.
That'll be great.
Yeah, it'd be good because it's going to be 85 degrees again next week. We're down to 58 degrees today, so it's a little.
Well, you know what? This is the first fully cloudy day we've had in months.
Wow.
I'm probably trying to remember. I'm not sure we even had one this summer. So it's not always the same. And during the winter, we get a lot of rain. I mean, not as much as you do, but more than people think.
So that song is a lie. It never rains.
Albert Hammond was right.
Yeah.
It does pour when it does rain. It often does pour. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a great time of year. I love it. I love the cooler weather. I love everything about it. We've been last couple shows. A lot of great releases are coming out. It's just a great time to be alive. I think. Really
I
good
can't
stuff.
argue with that. I ordered the Frank Hammersland.
Yes.
The next day I got an email saying it's on its way. So
yeah. Well, we had Frank on the show a couple years ago. Sadly, he passed away a little over a year and a half ago. But yeah, Frank was in Pogo Pops, and he was in Popium, and then his solo work. And his final album was Atlantis. We really thought that was going to be it, but he had been working on another album right up to when he passed away. And with the help of some of his former bandmates and friends and things, they completed the album. It's out now on Apollon Records out of Norway. It's called The Ocean Sleeps Alone Tonight. The title track is out. You can hear it on YouTube and
seems
things.
Very ballad heavy.
Very ballad heavy, but I think you have to kind of. There's Tim. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, Tim.
You got to think about
hanging in there, Tim.
The situation he was in as he was kind of finishing his last album up. So beautiful ballads. But I highly recommend it if there's any Hammersland fans out there. Apollon Records, The Ocean Sleeps Alone Tonight.
Yeah,
fantastic album.
Yeah. No, it certainly sounded good what I heard, and I'm looking forward to receiving it. It's 12 days before I head back east for IPO, and so this is always a time when people mail me stuff, and I hope that it gets to me, especially things from overseas. I hope they'll get to me in time, before I have to go. Right. And it would be great if I got them before next Wednesday or by next Wednesday, because then I could talk about them since we don't have a guest next week. So whatever I'm expecting some really good stuff. So hopefully it gets here on time.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, next week possibly John Borick will be joining you. I hope to be joining you from Orlando. It's all a matter of timing and connection. So we'll see what happens next week. But people
I certainly hope so too.
Jump in, join you.
Very happy the Yankees are up 2-0 in their series. It's been 15 years since they've been in a World Series, and people who love the Yankees or hate the Yankees expect them to win every year.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're the Yankees. B, we have a really high payroll, and C, fuck the Yankees. That's not for me. That's for the people that don't like them.
Hey, my neighbor directly across the street, she was up in the Bronx last night. She got a ticket from a friend of hers and saw the Yankees game.
And, that's great. Yeah, I wish, I wish I could. It's I'm just one unfortunately, I'm 1 week off. But hey, if the Dodgers win, if it's a Yankees Dodgers series, I'll still be here for the first couple of games. Yeah, I figured you would, John.
Yeah, indeed.
The first couple of games will be in LA. So hey,
Yeah.
I could cough up $3,000 for a ticket.
That's worth the 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah, right.
And just nothing but memories. At least when we buy CDs, right there they are. We have them,
No, right. Oh, I see what you have there.
Oh yeah.
No, I've only been to one World Series game. Game 2 of the '77 series, where Catfish Hunter got his ass kicked.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an economics exam on that day when I was at Syracuse University, and I lied to my professor saying that I had an eye appointment, and he knew I was lying. I could tell. But what could he do about it? So I drove. My friend Jamie and I drove back down from Syracuse and went to the game, and they lost 6-2. Catfish, I think, was lifted in, I want to say, the second or third inning. So that, I mean, that's karma coming back to bite me in the ass.
Yeah,
you lie about why you're missing the exam, they're going to lose. So yeah. Well, anyway,
that's good. It's good stuff. Good time of year.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a great time to bring on our guest.
Indeed.
Many of our friends, and of course, us included, are big fans of things that come out on the Cherry Red label, especially the subsidiaries, Grapefruit, the late RPM, Esoteric, and a bunch of others. And one of the things we love, besides the fact that the music is awesome, and some of it we already have, and a lot of it we don't, but among the best features of these releases are the liner notes, and the liner notes are always very thorough, always very revelatory, and one man in particular is responsible for most of them. I have a couple of things here. Well, this is when it was under the auspices of Sanctuary. But Real Life Permanent Dreams is just a great collection, and our guest wrote the liners for this one. Some really cool pop psych on here. What a Groovy Day.
Yeah.
This came out last year, the British Sunshine Pop Sound. And now more of an American release, Pour a Little Sugar on It. This one just came out on Cherry Red. The Chewy Sounds of American Bubblegum, 1966 to 71. Always interesting choices, and our guest is responsible for picking the tracks as well. And we owe him a great deal of gratitude. So without further ado, would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to Mr. David Wells?
Hi guys, thanks very much.
Hey David, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. How are things for you?
Fine, thank you. I got to get one thing out of the way, and we're also big baseball fans. You being from the UK may not be, but has it ever been brought up to you that there is?
It has once or twice, yeah. No relation. I've no idea what the American David Wells is like, but I hope he lives up to the name.
I'm gonna guess he's nothing like you. Because I know what he's like. I know what he's like. He was. What do I want to say? He was very silly. Let's put it this way.
Well, I'm capable of being silly, definitely.
Yeah. Well, not the way he was. He was a big goofball, but a very, very great baseball player.
We've had a few comments coming prior to the show about David Wells and baseball related, just trying to turn the card on everything.
I'm more interested in football. That's the proper football, not the American one.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really weird that our game was called football, because other than the kicks, the feet aren't really that much involved. But of course, in soccer, your feet are almost always involved. So
I think it probably grows out of rugby football. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a greater kind of affinity with that, I think. But
Yeah, could be.
So, but in the UK, the soccer that we call it is football, but you do call rugby, right? Not Australian rules football. Because I get confused.
it did start off as association football, and soccer is a corruption of association.
Okay. Yes.
So yeah, it says yeah.
I would imagine it's Australian rules football because that name implies that their rules are slightly different, or at least somewhat different than the rules of the game around the world.
Australia grew out of a British convict being sent there, so it's kind of there's a connection there.
Yeah. We love Australia.
Yeah, we love Australia.
We've had a few Australians as guests on our show, on our program.
Yeah. So I think that's the toughest sport on the planet, though, is rugby or Australian rules football. I think I don't know. I can't imagine a sport that's tougher than those guys banging their heads against each other.
Remember the commercial with I don't remember the rugby player, but Dick Butkus. It was a light beer. Dick Butkus is one of the more famous American football players. He was known as a very ferocious player. He was on a commercial with a rugby player, and they were trying to outdo each other as to which sport was tougher. And I remember that was the theme of the commercial for. It's probably like light beer from Miller or for some beer.
I think there's no comparison. Those rugby guys are so tough; it's ridiculous.
It's way tougher. It's got to be.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, we could digress all day.
No, let's get back to
on for a reason.
Well, yeah, David Wells and I were talking before we went live on the air here that you have been working from home and writing for 35 years in that ballpark, David. Did you go to school for writing? Are you a journalist major?
No, my father used to write about football for the local newspaper. And when he was ill, I used to do it from the age of about 13 or so. So I did that when I was a young teenager. But my teachers always said I should write for a living. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. So that's how life pans out, I'm afraid. So I'm doing something that I really didn't want to do. But
it happens.
What did you aspire to do? What were you hoping? What were your dream of as a kid?
I hate to say this, but I think I wanted to work with computers.
All right, that's one step above writing as far as thrill a minute, right?
Yeah, well, I thought computers were the future, so I was right about that. But
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I wasn't right about sustaining an interest in them. Now I hate them.
Now, how much of a music fan were you? And did your dad inform your music collection, or did you?
My uncle used to have a jazz band, but I can't really say there was a family history. I think it was only when I was about 12 or 13, and the first album I bought or had bought for me, I think, was Ziggy Stardust. And
not a bad start.
3 or 4 months after that, I saw Bowie at Hammersmith Odeon. And that was over the 2 nights when he announced that he was retiring, when in fact he was talking about Ziggy retiring. So that was kind of like my grounding in it, I suppose. And you quickly progress from something like that to being immersed in music, I think. And one of the things we did on Grapefruit a year or so ago was the unreleased Godley and Cream album from 1960.
Which is wonderful.
Well, I was a huge 10cc fan. Again, I saw them live 74, 75, and I loved the first 2 albums in particular. So that was a big kick to do that because it was kind of part of my life when I was 14, 15. And then I kind of got married quite young, settled down in the civil service, and we weren't making enough money. So I kind of, by that point, I was still, even though I was only 40, even when I'd been 14 or 15, I was buying records by mail order from people like Bill Allerton.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Standout Records.
Yeah.
Sadly, Bill died last year, I think.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, he used to do mail order in the mid-70s, and I used to buy from him and a few others as well. Things like the Nirvana album, Story of Simon Path, I got for him for £1, which was very nice.
Wow, I just paid a lot more for an original copy of that.
Well, this was 1975, so
Right.
then £1 was a lot of money for a second-hand album.
Oh,
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I got married and we needed more money, and so I kind of went back to, whereas I just bought records before that, I then started working kind of in my spare time as a dealer, buying and selling records. And I was doing that in the early 90s when somebody who bought stuff from me suggested starting a reissue label devoted to the really obscure private pressings from the UK, things like Complex and Dark and that sort of thing. So I started out with him. Again, I just went just going with the flow. He suggested it. I said, yeah, why not? It might be fun. And he dropped out after the first release, so I was left holding the baby. And
what was the name of that label? What was the name of that label, David?
10th Planet.
Oh, that was you.
That was me. Wooden Hill, that was me.
I love stuff on 10th Planet, especially the John Pantry album. That's a big favorite.
John Pantry, yeah, what a genius. I went to meet him, and he was working at a Christian radio station, and he was a bit embarrassed by the whole thing, like Try Little Sunshine, which is kind of a bit drug related and all that. So he didn't really want to talk about it. But so I did that on my own, really. I did Dantalion's Chariot. I did the Billy Nichols, the first vinyl release of Would You Believe.
Wow.
And because of that, because I was doing the notes, I was asked to write for Record Collector. And then that led to Sanctuary offering me some kind of deal as a consultant. And I did a lot of releases for them, including that Real Life Permanent Dreams box.
Oh, yeah.
And then Sanctuary got into financial difficulty and were acquired by Universal. And at that point, I was offered a deal by Cherry Red. And that was 15 years ago. And I'm still there, just about.
I love telling the following story because you mentioned Would You Believe?
Yeah.
The first issue of that album, which in fact is true because the original pressings only were available as promotional copies to radio stations.
Yeah.
Because Immediate Records went bankrupt at the time. I was at a record swap meet how many years ago? Maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. And somebody, a UK dealer had come over to LA to be part of it. And he had an original press copy of that album, and he was selling it for $13,000.
Oh.
So I've always wanted one. So I said, look, I'm never going to be able to afford it. Do you mind if I hold it and get a picture with me holding it? And I'd already been vetted by another dealer, so he trusted me, and he said, yeah, okay, no problem. So I did that. And for a split second, I thought, you know what? If I ran away with this, he wouldn't be able to catch me.
I did have an original copy as well, but I didn't get $13,000 for it.
You have one, do you say?
I did have one, yeah.
Oh, did?
I did. I don't have one now.
Where did you get it? I'm curious.
Well, this story about Immediate going bankrupt isn't quite right because the album was 68 and they didn't go bankrupt until late 69, early 70. What they did was they tested the market, I think, in Sweden. So what you'll find is that's a UK pressing. Most of those copies, 50 or so, whatever, turned up from Sweden. And I got it in trade from a collector. I can't remember what it was for, but had a slight split across the top seam, which is always the trouble with vinyl.
Yeah.
Especially when it goes through the post as well, which is really galling. So I did sell it, but because of that, I knew it before I asked Castle, who became Sanctuary, if I could do the vinyl issue of it just before they did the official CD. So I only did 1,000. I did 1,000 of everything because I was working from home, as I still am, and there's a limit to how far you can take it if you work from home. It wasn't like I wanted to be the next Richard Branson or anything like that. I viewed it more like a magazine that you press 1,000 copies, you do it 1 month, you sell out, you move on to the next one. But I remember that the wholesalers were not happy. One company said they could have sold 3,000 copies of it, and I said, yeah, that's not really why I do it. So yeah, I think even that 10th Planet reissue is kind of goes for money now. Not $13,000, but
no, fortunately, I do have one of those, as well as all the other reissues that have come out.
Wow.
Hopefully one day an original. That is one of my biggest holy grail albums. But
they are out there, but you have to pay for them, sadly.
You definitely have to pay for them.
Yeah.
Unless you get the unknowing seller, right?
Billy isn't too happy about it being worth so much money.
Yeah.
Well, I did speak with him about it, but he never mentioned that. Why does he feel that way? Do you know?
Because I think he was 17, 18 years old, and it was his big shot, his chance of being a star, because that is a great album, and it is. I like his later stuff, but that '68 album is something special, and it was kind of suppressed at the time because Andrew Oldham was still putting out albums by the Small Faces a year or so later, but he figured that was where the money was. That was what would save immediate. So for Billy, the fact it goes for this much money is kind of a glimpse into the esteem it's held in, and I think there's an element. Also, he didn't have a copy himself. I think that was.
Yeah, well, that'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I had read that it was because they were going bankrupt that they didn't release it. So thank you for clarifying.
I think they were slowly sliding under, but even so, they were still signing other bands. They were still having hits with Amen Corner and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's one of those things where people say, why did this not come out? Aha, it was because they were going bankrupt. And that was a year or so later.
Okay.
We questioned a lot of things on this show. Why isn't this come out yet? Or why isn't this reissued? Or why isn't this whatever? That's half the problem sometimes, But you said you were dealing in vinyl and trading vinyl, and do you to this day still have?
No, I haven't done that for some years now. I did it, and unlike other kind of rare record dealers, I used to play everything because I was obsessed by hearing new old stuff, as it were. Whereas they just want. I'm not. That sounds like I'm bitching. I'm just saying that some people were in it because it was something that would make money for them.
Yeah, right.
I really want all the South American psychedelic stuff, like Som Imaginaria and all that. I mean, I would get them, and I would play them all the way through. And you have to love music in order to take it to the next level.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
Do you still have a collection, though? Is your collection still there? Did you, or have you gotten rid of a lot of things?
The first thing I ever sold when I was trying to sell on my own after I just got married was The Arrival of the Eyes.
Okay.
The EP, which again now goes for insane money. And I was shocked when somebody offered me £30 for it, which is like $40. This was 84, something like that. And I loved that EP. And once I'd sold it, I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I sell from now on. It's you can have that collector mentality until you sell your first rare album or vinyl and think, I wish I hadn't sold that.
Yeah.
No, I actually get that. Once you sell one thing, like the collection has been compromised. So what's difference does it make if I sell the rest of it? I don't think I would do that, but I get that feeling.
Oh, once you've sold your soul to the devil, that's it.
Yeah. No. Something similar happened to me. I mean, I once had a pretty big coin collection, and half of it was stolen out of my drawer. So when that happened, I just said the hell with it and sold the other half, because it's like, it's no fun anymore. It's been compromised.
Yeah, indeed. But do you but you haven't said you've sold everything, though. Do you still have quite a collection on hand?
I haven't sold everything now. I've got a few things scattered away. And my son says to me about, how much is that worth? You're looking a bit peaky lately. So
Is there something? Is there something in your collection that is definitely one thing that you would hold on to and be buried with?
I have a mint copy of the Tinton Abbey single on DRAM.
Oh, okay.
Which was given to me by one of the band members, Stuart Mackay. So
Oh, nice.
it's worth a lot of money, but again, I'm not sure I'm that far down the line that I would actually sell that. My son would definitely will at some point, though.
Not if you're buried with it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, my oldest daughter loves vinyl. Of course, she's already stamped her name on everything that I have upon my demise. But she's asked me all about my signed Yachts albums and 999 albums and all the things that I have autographed from all these bands.
Where I've gone up in my son's estimation is that some of his friends love Bill Fay, and I put out From the Bottom of Grandfather Clock,
Right.
and he's astonished that I actually know Bill. So yeah, that means more than working with the Kinks or anything like that.
Yeah. I get that. That's very cool.
So, I mean, do you like any of the modern bands that are doing retro psychedelic pop music?
No, I do think of psychedelic music as kind of like a moment in time, I think. And I also don't really like bands who get together to play a specific type of music. The power pop thing is a good example, really. I did the American power pop thing from the 70s. And some people will carp and say, hey, that's not power pop. And it was when kind of before the genre had actually been named and codified, and you had bands who had elements of that sound but didn't have the whole thing there, like Don't Fear the Reaper, which is a Byrds ripoff. But it's also got cowbell, so it takes it away. It takes it away from what we understand now as power pop.
Right.
But I find it a bit dispiriting almost that bands get together in order to make a specific genre of music. That didn't used to be the way it was.
Yeah, no, I know that's true. They were the bands in the '60s were just kind of doing what they wanted to do.
It was more of an organic thing, yeah.
Well, yeah. They did what they did, and they did what came out of them, and it became what it was. And I see your point as to then later on bands got together because they wanted to play the music that sounds like that, And
I appreciate it's fun for them.
Yeah.
But whenever I hear it, I think, oh yeah, I like that. That reminds me of so and so.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't have a music festival if there weren't a bunch of bands who did that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
And no, that's okay. I mean, but
records.
The problem is the bands who are doing it just because not because they're trying to ape a certain style, but because they're doing what comes out of them. The problem is that what's coming out of them is really bad.
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious issue is that pop music as we know it is 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going to take it?
Yeah. How about Oasis coming back on tour? How happy does that make you?
Well, I like the first album, but that's it. The irony is that nobody was interested in Oasis when they split, and now it's like the second coming.
Yeah.
But it is over here anyway. I don't know what it's like in America. I don't know.
You know what? That we talked about this a number of shows ago, David Bash. Does anybody in America? I don't know. I can't get a feel for if anybody in America really cares when Oasis is back on tour and they're coming back. For the people I know that people don't really get. I don't really get that they are. But Saturday
a good friend of mine who I went to high school with, Lee Tannenbaum.
Yeah,
he was going to bring. He lives in Florida, but he could only get Oasis tickets to LA. He was going to fly out with his son, but his son didn't want to go, so he's taking me.
Nice.
And, I got to say, I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, my son just paid £400, about $500, to see Taylor Swift, and he didn't know where she was playing. Could have been anywhere in Europe.
Yeah, people all around the world will follow her all around the world too. So,
Well, I mean, well, going back to retro stuff, when I saw bands in the '70s, I didn't pay comparable costs to what you buy tickets for today. It's I mean, even middle of the road bands playing in 8,000 seat venues, which are not huge arenas. Their tickets are extremely expensive.
We're in middle of the road playing 8,000. Why didn't we talk to them about that when they were
middle of the road? Yeah, remember middle of the road.
I see tribute bands going out for a lot of money.
Yes, that's what happens. And that happens at every level. And that's actually been a source of frustration for me, because a lot of the venues don't really want to do a bands who do original music. They want tribute and cover bands, because they bring in the money. So
it's the same with musicals as well. The musicals in London tend to be things like a collection of Queen songs or ABBA songs or that sort of thing. It's kind of destroyed that scene as well, really.
Yeah. So when you get to Sanctuary, did you have any releases in mind, or did you get there first, kind of get a feel for it all, and then come up with something, or did they tell you what they wanted? It was John Reed, right?
Yeah, but John's at Cherry Red now, and I still work with him. And again, John worked at Record Collector in the '90s when I started working for them, when I started contributing anyway to them. I think I suggested a few things. Real Life Permanent Dreams was definitely my idea. It tended to be the compilations that were my idea, I think, rather than the individual bands. Because with a compilation, a multi-artist compilation, there's an element of creativity from the person who's compiling it and writing it. It's not really so evident when you're given a pile of music and said, right, tell the story of this. I think the first thing I did for Sanctuary was a Kinks best of.
I know which one that is.
And if you're doing your first sleeve note for a major company, you think, I love the Kinks. I'm going to make myself look stupid. I didn't realise at the time there was a new Kinks compilation every year or so, but I did one, and I did another one 2 years later, I think. So by then I'd got over my initial doubts.
Is that so? That was sometimes that was a fear of yours. You would write liners, and people would say, "Well, you got this wrong, or you forgot to say."
I think only with the Kinks, because that was my. Before then, on 10th Planet, I'd had obscure people like John Pantry, Zoot Money's Dantalion's Chariot, things like that. With the Kinks, they're a major band and they're dear to a lot of people's hearts. And so there is that. I also remember the first CD I ever bought, which kind of governed how I viewed sleeve notes when I did them, was a Monkees compilation. When I'd kind of finally bitten the bullet and thought, well, I'm going to have to go along with this because I've lost the war in terms of vinyl. And CDs are everywhere, so I might as well buy one. And so it was a Monkees compilation, and in it, I don't know who the guy was who wrote the sleeve notes. Never come across him again before or since, which probably tells its own story. But he was talking about the Monkees in relation to manufactured pop, which again I've sort of touched on in the new Bubblegum compilation, and he was talking about the lineage of manufactured pop. You talk about Ricky Nelson, and he said at one point, while nothing that the Monkees recorded could live with anything that Ricky Nelson did. And I thought, hold on, I'm being insulted here. I've just paid out good money for this, and I'm being told basically this is rubbish. So when I did start writing notes, I always kind of accentuated the positive, shall we say, because you have to bear in mind the fact that the people who love this stuff are the ones buying it. Yeah. It's not a good idea to have a go at them, indirectly by insulting their favourite band.
No.
So that's still the case. But I was shocked when I got it, and Do
you remember which compilation it was? I'm just curious because I probably have it.
Again, like the Kinks, there's so many Monkeys compilations. I think at that point in time, when I went into that shop to buy my first ever CD, that must have been the one in the racks in front of me.
Okay.
I thought I'd see, because I knew it was basically a hits compilation. And I thought, well, I know all this stuff. I've got it all on vinyl. Let's see what it sounds like on CD.
Sometimes, sometimes you get special things. And this is what I was like you. I resisted CDs for a while. But then all of a sudden they did a German pressing of the Rolling Stones Hot Rocks. That was the only place at the time you could get true stereo versions of Satisfaction, Get Off of My Cloud, and a few of the others. And I said, well, I have to have that.
Yeah.
So I have to buy a CD player. That's it. And that's what got me started. Yeah, every now and then, I think, a lot of times, like, I remember Paul Revere and the Raiders, there were a few compilations where stereo versions of the song showed up for the first time. So, if you're a collector of that kind of thing, you have no choice, really.
Oh, eventually, yeah, you have to go with the flow. Like I say, if you lost the war, there's no point in carrying on fighting. But eventually, yeah, that's what I did. There were still people who were very kind of, who this was their life's work almost, resisting CDs. So when I started Wooden Hill, I did give it a different name to 10th Planet so that I could differentiate between vinyl and CDs, because people would say I was a sellout if I was then going over from CDs, from vinyl to CDs and all that sort of stuff.
You just said Wooden Hill. Wooden Hill.
Wooden Hill was like the CD equivalent of 10th Planet.
Yes, I'm trying to think what I have on.
I never knew that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, wait. What?
Well, it's only me anyway, so I mean, when I.
What was on Wooden Hill that I'm trying to remember?
I did the Story of Oak records. I did Mike Stewart's band. I did the Dantali's Chariot on CD.
Yeah.
That went well. I did Bill Fay from the Bottom of an Old Grandfather Clock. Initially, that was going to be on vinyl, but there was so much stuff that CD was a better medium for it.
Yeah. And as far as researching, because when you started researching for acts or to write about, it really wasn't big time internet at the time.
I started doing it before.
And I
do look back and think, how did I do that? I did.
Yeah, that's the question. How do you do that without the internet?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you go back to the 70s, I used to get Who Put the Bomb magazine, and you could say the same about that. Obviously, you look back and there were mistakes in it, but then they were working in a vacuum. So in England, there used to be a column in one of their music weeklies, which kind of rounded up the fanzines that were available from different parts of the world, and Who Put the Bomb would be covered. And to me, Greg Shaw was massively important in terms of
very much so
enthusiasm. Even the power pop thing itself, I still think that was basically down to Greg Shaw.
It was.
Codifying it, giving it a name. I mean, I know the phrase had been used before, but he was the one who popularized it for that type of music.
Yeah, he resurrected it after Pete Townsend was the one who supposedly coined it.
Yeah, I found the interview at 67, and then even in 73, 74, I think Village Voice used it for a Sweet compilation.
Oh, did they? Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
But even then, you got another 2 or 3 years, and the English thing initially was pure pop, the Nick Lowe thing, pure pop for now people.
Now people, yeah.
So that was kind of parallel to that, but it was power pop that took off as a phrase.
On Facebook especially, one of the most popular topics, and it's definitely generated ire among a lot of people, is what is power pop and what isn't it? And we've never really, you like to use the word codified, we've really not codified that yet. I mean, everyone has their own definition, and there's so much disagreement as to certain bands or certain songs.
That's right. I remember the Raspberries' Overnight Sensation coming out and getting quite a lot of play in England, and that doesn't sound anything like a power pop record.
Well, a lot of the songs aren't. So yeah, some are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that particular song is not. It's got that kind of chintzy piano thing in the middle.
Oh, you're talking about the song. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying that got a lot of play on British radio, even though it wasn't a hit. But it doesn't sound like a power pop song.
Well, it's kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of like when Vincent Furnier formed the band Alice Cooper. That wasn't supposed to be his name. That was the name of the band.
Yeah.
But because everyone started calling him that, he finally just decided to own it. That's kind of the way it works with power pop. If a band has one power pop song, sometimes suddenly the band is labeled as power pop, and then all the songs they do become labeled.
One of the things I often get is somebody saying, "That's not a power pop band," and I'm saying, "No, I know, but they might have visited that territory occasionally."
Right.
And that's what this compilation is, a collection of songs that bands like the Whackers, for instance. I was probably the only person in the 70s who was obsessed with Bob Segerini, or certainly in England. That's how it felt like.
Bob,
Yeah.
a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I tracked down all of the Bob Segerini related releases, which even included By the Dudes album.
Right.
Which is terrible, in my opinion.
No, I'm not a fan of that one either.
Even the Whackers were a bit spotty.
Yeah.
But even so, the late 70s stuff on the radio I bought, he obviously had a knack of choosing things like, a Slade song to cover, and he got the right song and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, and every time I mentioned Bob Seger, I said, "No, you mean Bob Seger."
Right.
No, I mean Bob Segerini. And I tracked down some obscure Canadian 4-track EP. That's probably still got that simply because nobody was interested in buying it. But
right. Yeah. But what's happened now? I mean, my definition of power pop has become: if power pop fans like it, then it's power.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that gets me up when people get upset about these things. It's fun. It should be fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh no. Those discussions get very heated.
I mean, we deliberately put Velvet Underground on the Bubblegum compilation.
Pardon?
Yeah. We deliberately put the Velvet Underground on the Bubblegum.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about that. When I first saw the cover, I thought what everybody else thought, Velvet Underground. And I love the fact that if that was your decision to put that there, I applaud you. Because once I saw what song it was, it's like, hey, they're ba-ba-bas in it. It's not that far off.
It's Doug Gill, who's got an incredibly vacuous voice, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know that I don't think I would call that song power pop, but let's put it this way. I've heard things called power pop that are much further away from it than that. But the one, since you opened up this Pandora's box, I have to ask you about this. Okay, and take this in the good spirit that is intended, but in what universe is Me and You and a Dog Named Boo power pop?
Well,
or bubblegum pop.
Bubblegum.
In my defense, which is never a good start to a conversation, in my defense, we were turned down for over 70 tracks on that compilation.
Yeah.
You use up an awful lot of music on a 3 CD, 4-hour set.
True.
The idea initially was to go from the late 60s to early 70s with David Cassidy, the Osmonds, Lobo, Melanie. But in the end, the Osmonds didn't want to be associated with the Bubblegum compilation.
Why?
Yeah, and that brings up did you contact Universal and you got that answer from them?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. That's going to be my follow-up question to that. When you said you were turned down for 70,
I mean, people have this idea that bands have no say in what comes out, but they do. When I did the the British pub rock thing. I wanted to use a track from the Elvis Costello band before he became Elvis Costello. Flip City, they were called. So there was this demo that would come out on one of their specialist Elvis compilations, and I thought we'll go for that. And we were told by the company we have to run this past Elvis Costello's management, and I thought, well, that's blown it. He's not gonna allow us to use that. Right. But they did. So you never know. I understand, like the Doors management turning down "Hello, I Love You," which is bubblegum, whatever anybody else might say. But we weren't able to use that. And like I say, we were turned down for over 70 tracks. We weren't able to use anything that is on the Super K label because of some ongoing dispute.
Yeah.
So in the end, it was a challenge finishing it off. Even the artwork on the front cover should have been Cherry Pop Tart and her friends. I don't know if you know Cherry Pop Tart.
Pardon?
Cherry Pop Tart? No.
Cherry Pop Tart.
Have I ever had one? Did you ask?
No, yeah.
No. So it's a spoof by Larry White, I think it is, on the Arches, but it's kind of a soft porn spoof. So
I do not know it now.
Oh, okay. Well, I probably shouldn't have mentioned it anyway. But
no, that's
no, you can't use that. So we went back to the late '60s, and I found a comic with. The cow seals were never big in America, but never big in England.
Right.
So I was surprised to find there was a comic devoted to the cow seals.
Mm-hmm.
I had them on the front cover with the girls interjecting groovy, far out, and all that sort of thing. So we used that for the band names, which is how Velvet Underground came to be on there.
It's a fantastic cover. I mean, just that. It's hard to see it on the camera here, but yeah, you've got the cow sills, and then you got all the girls screaming the different band names, which is it's a brilliant cover. I love it.
Which is a bit insulting to the band themselves who are on stage, really. But
there is one girl in the back that's screaming the cow sills back there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had to mention them. Yeah. It'd been a bit of an insult if we'd had them on the front cover and then
didn't mention their name
for other bands all the time.
Some of the tracks on here, I'm just amazed. Like I actually have Willie and Weavy by the Pastrami Malted. I found that like 40 years ago in somebody's a guy I knew bought out a record collection in Rochester, New York. He only wanted the garage records. He said, and then he took what he wanted, left the rest in his garage, interestingly, and said, "Go through them, take whatever you want, listen to them. If you don't want it, bring it back. But for what you keep, it's only $1 a record." So I got a hell of a lot of great bubblegum stuff, including William Weavy. I love it.
I'm pretty sure that that label only put out that song because the head guy's name was Levy. I'm sure that's why. I think they deliberately made the record for him.
Wait, was it Morris Levy?
No, it's another Levy.
I hope
Levy,
so.
I think. Yeah, no, he would have killed them.
Yeah, I was going to say he would have shot him. Yeah, had them shot.
So I mean, even then, you can listen to that record objectively and say this is absolute garbage. On the other hand, it's fairly definitive bubblegum.
It's fun. Yeah, no, that one belonged.
Okay.
Here's one did you try to get? To me, this is one of the ultimate bubblegum songs by someone that you would never associate with bubblegum. Did you try to get Looky Looky by Giorgio?
No, because he's German.
What is...
Well,
I don't know.
It's American bubblegum.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. If we did a European bubblegum, that would be the first track on there. But it's Giorgio Moroder who went on to do I Feel Love. So
yeah.
You know what? If you do a European bubblegum, I don't know
why I didn't catch up. But is that in the works? Is there a plan to do that?
Well, I think Cherry Red would like to have a British bubblegum compilation. And of course, I have to bear in mind the fact that they keep buying up catalogues. So we tend to have to use them. Otherwise, there's no point.
Right.
So, for instance, the Bubble Rock Is Here to Stay was because they had access to the Jonathan King catalogue and said, right, what are we going to do with this? And because he made a record called Bubble Rock Is Here to Stay, then it tended to make sense to make that as the compilation. So generally speaking, a lot of the compilations are governed by what Cherry Red bring into the, into the room, really. Yeah, I think, for instance, they were doing a deal with Larry Page of Page One, but then he's died, so I don't know where we've left that, really.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't tend to have much say in terms of the catalogues that they acquire. I just get told what's come into the office and what can we do with it. I mean, it might be an idea to ask that question before they actually purchase the catalogue, but...
So tell us, what's your process in doing? How does it usually? Do you come up with the ideas generally, and then if you do, where do you go from there to make a compilation happen?
If it's the irony about the genre compilations is I don't really like genres. I like songs, but then I have to go beyond that and then think in terms of genres. But the genres tend to come from me, and also the ones which are geographically based. We did a West Midlands one, which is just a chance to spoof, Once Upon a Time in the West Midlands.
Right.
We've done Los Angeles. I think we're doing what else are we doing? We're doing Detroit next, I think.
Oh.
Despite the fact I've no idea where Detroit is in the country, or I've never been outside of Europe, but that won't stop me from doing it. So yeah, oddly enough, again, to say how involved bands are, we applied to Warner's for an Alice Cooper track, and suddenly Shep Gordon turns up and says, you should use this track in terms of the other tracks. Here's what you want from there. And we thought, didn't know he was still involved, but so you don't know. There's always a delay of several months before companies like Universal and Sony come back to us. Yeah. And normally it's because they are checking with the bands.
Okay. So something like this, American Bubblegum, how long did this take start to finish to put this together? Is this
we tried it 5 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And couldn't get enough to do it. But since then, Cherry Red have a better relationship with bands like Sony. BMG, for instance, have mainly British and European stuff. So although we have a good relationship with them, they're no good for the American compilations, really, or very little anyway. So we have a better deal now with Sony and Universal and Warner Brothers. So that enabled us to get more. But even so, like I say, we're still turned down for more than 70 tracks. So
it's amazing.
I'd love to see that list sometime.
Really, yeah.
There's a lot of duplicate stuff on there.
So that's pretty. I mean, that's amazing. When you hold a package like this, many people don't realize. And I think David Bash and I, a couple of weeks ago, we started talking about maybe finding you and having you on the show. It's like there's so much work that goes into this.
It's years. With Tintern Abbey, we finally got that out 2 years ago. I've been exchanging Christmas cards with the main guy, the bassist, who had all the tapes since 1999. And he kept saying about when I retire, I'm going to go through all these tapes and all that. And it took, I think, 19 years to get from that initial process to actually getting something out. So I'm sure people look at it and think, well, this is just something that's cobbled together quickly, and it's taken, like I say, the best part of 2 decades to get together.
Well, yeah, not only just finding the songs and getting the permission to use the songs, and then of course everything that goes in getting a good copy of that song, whether it's the master tapes or from vinyl or whatever it may be, and then all the information that you have to cull for the line, not only the liner, but all the information on the track.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. And you take some of these bands that David and I have never heard of. It's like,
well, now you know why I work from home. I haven't seen the light of day for 18 years, I don't think.
You know, it's amazing amount of work.
If you love something, it doesn't feel like work, and it's easy to disappear down a rabbit hole when you're looking at an obscure band and you think,
sure.
"Oh, I wonder what happened to that." You know, and you find out that guy went on to being part of, I don't know, some 80s hair metal band or something like that, and you can just lose yourself for hours. And I think, oh, I've only got to write 150 words. But you have to know about a band's entire career in order to condense it to 150 words.
Right.
And you can't rely on the bands either.
How often, speaking of the bands, how often do you contact the bands for information?
Yeah, quite often. With the British bands, it's obviously easier. We've done quite a bit of American stuff lately, and that tends to be by email. But even then, bands, again, there are pros and cons to having bands involved. You get it straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, but then you get told, "Oh, I don't want that to be stated. I don't want that to be written," or "Oh, I don't agree with that," etc., etc. I remember interviewing Don Farden of the Sorrows for the first CD I did of theirs. Again, I did a compilation of theirs on Wooden Hill as well, with the Italian stuff. But anyway, so I was speaking to Don Farden for, I think it was a Sanctuary release. And he said to me, "Oh, we were lucky. We had a hit with our first record, Take a Heart." And I said, "Oh, actually, no, it's your third single." He said, "No, it wasn't." And I said, it was. It was your third single. That you had a couple before." And I mentioned the titles. And he said, "I wasn't even the singer on that first record, on that record you mentioned." He said, "Why do we do that? Why are you lying?" And I said, "I'm not lying." But clearly, he told promoters for the last 40 or 50 years that they'd had a hit record with their first single. And then he went off his glorious solo career, you know, Indian Reservation and all that. And in his head, that was the way it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but he was quite indignant about the fact that I was correcting him. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, so who am I to correct him? But it's out there, you know, it's a matter of public record. So, yeah, it can be difficult.
I'll bet you get this also, where bands will say that certain songs were big hits when they really weren't.
Oh, all the time. And sometimes it's a question of people only having an incomplete grasp of another language. For instance, the first Orange Bicycle EP in France has something about the premiere disc, and people translated that as, I think it said the #1 record, and they translated that as being a #1. It meant #1 as in their first record.
Right.
All the time from people like Greg Shaw, Brian Hogg onwards. You know, he had Bam Balam in the late 70s, early 80s. He worked for Bam Caruso. This has been the Orange Bicycle were huge in France. Had a #1 record. They didn't. Nobody cared about them at all in France. But it just becomes handed down through the generations. And even now, I'm sure on the internet, they were huge in France. That's what I'm saying. You can't trust anything. And that's why you have to know about a band in order to write about them, rather than just look up Wikipedia.
What's your biggest source material for your research?
My old sleeve notes. That's terrible, isn't it? No, I do have a lot of old books. I have all the old Hooper at the Bumps are still really useful to me, especially for the Power Pop compilation.
Yeah.
When they used to invite demo tapes from bands and all that sort of thing. So I actually contacted 2 or 3 of them, found out where they were from the old Hooper at the Bumps, and found names that were still in that area and managed to contact them. "Are you the guy who was in such and such?" And they said, "My God, well, that's over 40 years ago." I said, "Well, I'm just putting a compilation together." So it does come from any and all sources, really. But yeah, I mean, I've got thousands of CDs. I've got hundreds of old reference books, melody makers, NMEs, and all that sort of stuff. And over the years, a lot of that material has appeared, normally uncredited, on the internet. And sometimes I look at a piece and think that's quite useful, and I think, hold on, and I realise I've written it somewhere down the line. And it just hasn't been credited. But you know, you assimilate information, you put information out there for it to be known. You don't do it for sort of personal glory or anything like that.
Right.
It's kind of flattering in a way, but you also think, well, it wouldn't have hurt to put down where you got this information from. But such is life. There's more important things to worry about.
Now, I'm loath to bring this up, but it was brought to my attention. I just want to give you the opportunity to speak to this. But there has been certain word out there that some of the liner notes that you've done have come from other sources and uncredited.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not going to say who said it, but it has been said.
No, that's never been the case. Obviously, if I might paraphrase somebody else who's posted something somewhere. But generally speaking, if it's something like that, it's 150 words and 90 odd bands, and often the information that's on online isn't credited in the first place anyway. I'd be interested to know which bands they were, because I know I've genuinely never done anything like that. There'd be no reason to.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see what answers we get from anybody after they watch it. Yeah,
I would love to know what that relates to. Yeah, because I've got absolutely no idea. Is this about a compilation?
It's one of the ones. It's about your Los Angeles compilation. That.
Oh right, yes, I know one or two people with their noses put out a joint about that, but it's. I think the attitude was, it's not his territory. He shouldn't be doing this. And I did get that from within the industry. So if I have a fair idea where that's come from, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should ever say you shouldn't be doing a territory because you're not from there. That's pretty silly. If anyone's saying that, it's like, well, then why didn't you do it first?
Well, this is it. I don't see any kind of comparable compilations coming out of America about American stuff. And that is why Cherry are able to do pretty well out of that stuff, because
no doubt
nobody else really is doing it. But yeah, the Los Angeles thing was, I think, our first American one, and one or two people who were involved with it thought they should have been doing it. So yeah.
Can I revisit a quick question? You talked about your Cherry Red makes the decisions as to what they release or whatever. Did you say you do or don't have a say in maybe something that they want to reissue? Are some of your ideas taken to heart, and do they listen to, like, because you know things like David and I do, of things that have never been reissued and we wish they were?
Well, the Grapefruit stuff does pretty well, and so because of that, I think I'm indulged to a certain extent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In terms of ideas. Well, if I can mention one band that we've all been I tried hard with Pop Detective, could get nowhere, but Scotland's Head Boys, the first Head Boys album, everybody's been screaming for that, and Universal just was like.
Well, I managed to get them to do a Flies compilation, late 70s Coventry band, that is. Neil O'Connor, who went on to be in Hazel O'Connor's band.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was because I was a huge fan of theirs in the late 70s. And again, that did reasonably well, better than they were kind of expecting, I think. But Head Boys, the thing is, they're not known over here.
Here's one that I've been trying. I've been hoping would come out. I'm sure you were talking about the Osmonds before. They didn't want to be. They said they didn't want to be part of a bubblegum compilation.
Well, that might have been their management, yeah.
Or their management.
Yeah.
They had an album in the late '60s called "Wonderful World of the Osmonds." Do you have it?
No, the track I was trying to get for the bubblegum compilation was "I Can't Stop," which I think is about '68. Is it?
Yeah, but that was owned by Uni. This one came out. The Wonderful World of the Osmonds came out, I think, only in, I want to say, Germany and Japan, and it's got their Barnaby singles on them, including "Taking a Chance on Love," "Mary Elizabeth." It's a great album. The Osmonds it's never been reissued by anybody. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the Osmonds or what, but that needs an issue.
I think that late 60s stuff is something they don't want to see coming out.
It must be, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a look into it though.
Well, we've got a million ideas for you if you run short ideas.
But the thing I always have to bear in mind for a single artist compilation is what's their reputation in England.
Yeah, it's funny because I did release on Pop Detective. I released the Head Boys' never released second album. They packed it in after the first album, even though the album did very well in the UK and it made some inroads in the US. They were done and they had a second album ready to go and never released it. So I put that out. So I get a taste of all their fans from around the world saying, "Why won't you put out the first album?" I said, "It's not that easy, And
who owns it?
What's that?
Who owns it?
Universal.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, there you go. See.
Yeah. They're very useful in terms of multi-artist compilations. They will clear a lot of stuff, including a lot of American things. I think since Gail Zappa died, the Zappa stuff is now available for single tracks. That is, although
Right.
we weren't allowed Jelly Roll Gumdrop for the Bubblegum compilation. But generally Universal are quite hard work.
Yeah.
God, I had something in mind.
I'm sorry, I threw you off there.
Well, here's another thing I had in mind. What's the one compilation, or I guess this would probably be single artists more than anything, that you've wanted to do that you just can't get done?
We've been trying for several years to get a complete kind of Clifford T. Ward package together.
Oh, yeah.
And Universal won't play ball at all. Obviously, Cherry Red owned the Dandelion label, so they've got the early stuff. They got some of the later stuff. I dealt with his, both myself and Cherry Red have dealt with Pat Ward, Clifford T's widow, and she'd love to see something out, which is kind of got the hits on there as well. But for some reason, Universal, they're not even denying it. They're just blanking us in terms of trying to get permission to do it. And it is a shame because it would do quite well, but also their money would be useful for his widow.
Well, that's part of that's a big part of the argument. People talk to me about why at this point, why not an album like the Head Boys' first album, which sold 30,000 copies, I guess, in total. What's the harm in licensing it to a small indie label or whoever?
Yeah,
to put it out, because three of the four Head Boys are gone. There's only one left, and
there are some occasions when I think that they've either lost the paperwork until they can't prove ownership, or they've lost the masters.
Yes.
Here's another thing that some of my friends have had sometimes the label just doesn't want to bother. It's like if they don't even want to have their in-house attorneys write up a contract. It's just not worth it to them, unless you'll pay an exorbitant amount of money for the licensing. So I've had my friends get that when, my label owner friends get that when they've tried to do reissues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're not even. It's just not worth our time. You
can't rationalize with these people. Sometimes we get things turned down. Like I say, in the Osmonds, that was actually turned down. It wasn't they didn't get back to us, which sometimes happens. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Here's something else I'm curious about. What happened to? I remember about 6 or 7 years ago, there was something about once a track is 50 years old, it becomes public domain. And suddenly, I remember around 2012, 2013, a massive amount of compilations were coming out with songs from 1962 and 63.
It was then extended to 70 years because the Beatles stuff was about to come into public domain.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. That makes sense.
Well, hopefully you're still doing this in 20, 30, whatever.
We moved back to 90 years then.
Probably, yeah. That's interesting.
Holy cat! No, it's very, very interesting. And many. I bothered Universal so much that I finally just got a
Anything that's not come out before does expire after 50 years, which is why Pink Floyd in 2017 were putting out all those early demos.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Was it 2017? Around then anyway. And it was to renew copyright in that case. Once it's out, that's it. That renews it for another 50, 70 years. But obviously some of these things were existing on bootleg, and so they kind of protected their own back, as it were.
Well, so what do you have coming up that you're free to announce?
Well, I always hate it when people ask me what I'm working on, because my mind goes blank. What am I working on? What am I doing?
I know.
Where am I? Doing a Fat Mattress 3 CD compilation, which includes their Beat Club stuff, German TV show.
Wait, which band? I'm sorry.
Fat
Mattress.
Fat Mattress. Okay.
Noel Redding's band after he
Right.
stormed out of Hendrix Experience.
Wow.
And then he was sacked from his own band. So we're doing that. Like I say, there's a Detroit compilation. None of the sleep notes of which will be ripped off from anybody else. And I think there's a Texas compilation as well. Some of those sleep notes might be ripped off from somebody else.
Are you familiar with the band the Coastliners from Texas?
No.
They released a bunch of singles, a couple of which showed up on Pebbles compilations that Greg Shaw had put out.
Yeah, I mean, some of those Pebbles tracks, I've tried to contact the bands. I managed with the Satans on the now legendary Los Angeles compilation, and I found they were just a bunch of high school kids, really clean cut, all wearing glasses and all that sort of thing. So I thought that's a bit, making deals, the Satans and all that. And they obviously thought it'd be a bit of a joke to call themselves the Satans, but they weren't satanic at all.
Right. Well, I'll tell you a little about the Coastliners. I think they were from Dallas, or maybe Houston, I think. And they had a few some of their early singles were very Beach Boys, Four Seasons-ish. Then they got into something that was a little bit more rock, but very melodic. And then they went complete garage. And they might have enough songs for a compilation. And I know I have talked with one of the guys, although it's been a while. So maybe if I can find who I spoke with and their contact info, I'll send it to you, because I'll tell you, Coastline is complicated.
I think the compilation will go from around 65 to 72. We've organised a deal with Charlie, who owned the International Artists label.
Yeah.
So that's useful for Texas stuff. We've done a deal with Psychedelic Records, who were based in Texas for a while. And
Love them.
Yep.
Yeah. So we've now got access to their stuff as well.
One of my favorite two-sided singles was on Psychedelic, The Novas.
Yeah.
Anna's William Jr. back with Anna's Time. I know David Denard from the Novas, so if there's anything you ever want to do with them,
I tried to access to the LA DJ who'd covered the trip. Jeffrey, was it? Couldn't find him anywhere. Some of these people just seem to disappear. Obviously, we're talking about 60 years ago now. So.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's half the. I mean, you talk about a lot of these bands that you're dealing with or trying to find, man. Many of them could be gone, and that's we try to do the same thing with our show here. We try to dig up some really interesting artists from the 60s and early 70s.
The other thing, sadly, is that some of the people are still around and not in the best of health.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a terrible issue. I interviewed somebody 20 years ago for a sleeve note. Tried to speak to him a few months ago to update the compilation, and he wasn't able to be interviewed any longer, so we had to rely on old quotes. That is increasingly an issue.
Well, that's part of why we do this show, and why we find some great artists from the 60s. It's an archival project, very much too. With a lot of these people that we talk to.
One thing that we're both Mark and I are really proud of is there's an album that came out in 1977 on Capricorn Records in the States by a British band called Fringe Benefit. And it sank. It was a great pop album, but it sank without a trace because Capricorn didn't know how to market.
No, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, they were more Southern rock, and somehow this ended up on their label, and they didn't know how to market it. But we found the main guy, his name John Jones. So that was another hard thing because he had such a common name. But I found him on Facebook, and we got him on the show. And because of his appearance, or well, not maybe because of, but as a byproduct of, we ended up getting the album re-released on CD through a label that we know.
And it's done
when that kind of stuff can happen, it's just
I mean that's the sort of thing. If you're in a secondhand store, whatever, and you chance upon it, you take one look at the label and say, "No, that's not for me."
Mm-hmm.
So there are all kinds of weird and wonderful things out there.
Well, I was lucky that a local radio station played one of their songs. Or you're right, I never would have bought their record.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh wow. Well, this has been a wonderful chat, David. I really appreciate you coming on Material Issues and talk about this whole process.
We appreciate you coming on, and even more than that, all the amazing reissues that you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
These are a labor of love, and fortunately, there are people out there.
You can normally tell from a release whether it comes from a good place.
No, we know these come from a great place, and we are very, very grateful to you.
Yeah, we are.
We're very grapefruit to you.
and this is the beauty of the internet and whatnot, because this was just a few short weeks ago that David and I were saying, wouldn't it be cool if we could find this David Wells guy and see how this whole process works? And here we are. And now a lot of our questions have been answered, and it's been absolutely fascinating. This poor little sugar on the American, the Chewy Chewy Sounds of American Bubblegum 66 to 71 is the latest one that we picked up. So this is Cherry Red Records. Anybody can find the Cherry Red, Grapefruit, etc. via Amazon.
By the way, it's a very inspired choice to have the Globetrotters on here, because a lot of people looking at that record, they'd never think it was bubblegum in any sense, but man, bouncing all over the world has long been a favorite song.
It's Don Kirshner again, isn't it? Employing Neil Sedaka once again, getting these soul guys in the studio to do something for TV. So it's kind of like him slowly sort of fading out, really. The Monkees to the Archies to the Harlem Globetrotters, and then the Kansas.
No, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
You gotta love it.
Well, David, I know it's late over there, and so we'll wind things up. But again, thank you so much for being on and for sharing your insights.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yeah, best of luck with everything you got coming up, and keep doing it, because you got a lot of fans around the world that love what you do and love the re-releases and the compilations and things that are going on. Cherry Red's great, Grapefruit's great, and you do a great job. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Have a great night, David.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Very cool.
That was very, very cool.
Yeah, it never occurred to me that that 70 tracks. I mean, you always know that there's going to be some opposition by labels, or they don't want to be bothered, or you just can't find out who owns something. But wow, 70, that's almost as many tracks as are on the compilation in the first place. So
as you said, that would be a pretty cool list to see. what they got told no or couldn't get on the compilation.
Maybe he'll share that with us. I don't know.
Yeah, because I
hope he does.
When we were talking about this stuff, there were a number of bands on here and tracks. It's like never heard of this, and that's the beauty. That's part of the beauty of a great compilation like this. It's like, where'd this come from? And that's awesome. But wonderful, great interview. Yeah,
indeed, it was.
Really enjoyed it.
So next week, you're going to be in Florida. Either it'll be you and I again, or it'll be you and I and John Borak, or John Borak and me. I don't know.
Or we might just bring somebody completely different from all of us and have them sit here and talk about stuff, and we'll take a vacation. But Yeah, I'll be down in Orlando visiting my daughters. Hopefully, I'll be able to get online next Wednesday and do episode number 176. But after that is the 30th. That's going to be a cool interview. That's going to be a 5 p.m. start time Eastern, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, thank you for getting your guests to adjust that, because if it was at 6 Eastern, I'll be in Boston awaiting the beginning of IPO, and I won't have, I have to be out of the hotel by 6 and get to the club. So
so no, he was very happy. So that's going to be Mike Scavone on October 30th. Mike played with the Doughboys on a couple of different ends of the career, beginning and middle and end. He played with Ram Jam, and he's currently touring the world with the Yardbirds. And it's going to be a cool interview. So that's coming up on the 30th. And I think after that, we just got so many irons in the fire. We'll start booking stuff, and
we'll get some weeks we'll get guests, some weeks it'll just be us. Either way, it's a lot of fun for everybody, I hope. And,
we really appreciate everybody sticking around. And again, let your friends know. Go on over to materialissues.com and subscribe there on the YouTube feed. That helps spread the word. So it's always good to hang out with our friends.
Absolutely, we appreciate you so much. We really do.
Indeed. Well, everybody, have a great one. We will see you next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, live from Orlando or Southern California.
Los Angeles.
And Los Angeles. But love to Rena.
Love to chat.
We'll talk to everybody soon.
To your daughters.
Will do.
Thanks.
Stuff, everybody. Material Issues number 175 is in the books. Good night.